The venue was straight out of a fairy tale, with twinkling lights decorating the large, old oak trees and soft, romantic music floating through the air. It was supposed to be my dream day, marrying Alex, the man who had swept me off my feet. But as the saying goes, marry a man and you marry his family. In my case, that family included Gloria, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, a woman whose soul seemed as twisted as the gnarled branches of the old oaks surrounding us. The first incident occurred during the preparations in the bridal suite. My bridesmaids were helping me into my wedding gown, a beautiful A-line dress with delicate lace details. We were laughing, enjoying champagne, and capturing the joyous moments on camera. That's when Gloria walked in, her eyes narrowing as they landed on me. "Your dress looks a bit tight, don't you think?" she said, her voice dripping with disdain. I forced a smile. "It's exactly how I wanted it, actually." My maid of honor, Lisa, stepped in to rescue me. "Maya, you look absolutely stunning. Don't listen to negativity." Gloria smirked. "I'm not being negative. I'm just worried for the poor dress. Looks like it's screaming for help." "Mom, that's uncalled for." Alex finally chimed in, but his voice was so low it almost felt like an afterthought. Ignoring the tension, Gloria sauntered over to a table, filled with an array of perfumes, and started spritzing herself lavishly. "I hope this is expensive. I only wear the finest," she said, eyeing me through the mirror. Lisa shot her a disapproving look. "It's Maya's day, Gloria. Maybe for once make it not about you." Gloria laughed sarcastically. "Oh, it's definitely her day. A day she'll remember for the rest of her life one way or another." I could feel my heart sinking into my stomach. What should have been a few moments of pre-wedding peace had turned into yet another episode of Surviving Gloria. As if on cue, the wedding coordinator knocked softly and poked her head in. Taking a deep breath and pasting a smile on my face, I made my way to the garden where I'd be getting married. The ceremony went smoothly, but even as I said, "I do," my mind was already fretting about the ordeal that my life was about to become. Alex slipped the wedding ring onto my finger, and we shared a kiss, sealing our vows. However, in the corner of my eye, I saw Gloria, her expression a mixture of triumph and disdain, as though she had just won a distasteful bet. At the reception, Gloria took it upon herself to entertain our guests. She mingled, offering underhanded compliments and subtle jabs. "You know, Maya is quite an accomplished young lady. Not everyone can get by on just looks, can they?" she said to one of my aunts. The evening was a blur, marred by her snide comments, manipulative behavior, and Alex's inability to stand up to her. I remember retreating to our bridal suite after the reception, my heart heavy and my head clouded with a dark foreboding about what the future held. As I lay down next to Alex that night, I wondered what I had signed up for. I looked over at him. He was already asleep, blissfully unaware of the emotional chaos that was my reality. And I couldn't help but think, was the man lying next to me my loving partner? Or was he merely an extension of his mother's cruel will? That night, instead of dreams of marital bliss, I was haunted by a single unsettling question. Had I just made the biggest mistake of my life? The first few weeks after our honeymoon were tolerable. We settled into my home, which I had poured years of hard work into. It was a cozy 3-bedroom house filled with warm colors, comfortable furniture, and memories of a life before Gloria. Alex seemed to appreciate the effort I had put into making it a home, but every time his mother visited, I could see him regress into the shell of a man who could never say no to her. Gloria's visits were like clockwork. Every Sunday afternoon, just in time to ruin the weekend. The first time she came over, I had spent the whole morning cooking a feast. I made her favorite roast beef and a vegetarian option for me. I hoped that by embracing her tastes, maybe I'd win some goodwill. "Maya, this is quite good," she said after her first bite, making it sound like she was granting me a huge favor by acknowledging my cooking. "Thank you, Gloria. I'm glad you like it," I said, attempting to maintain a cheerful atmosphere. However, as the day wore on, her criticisms started flowing like a never-ending stream. "You call this clean? You do set low standards for yourself," she said as she dragged her finger over the mantelpiece, examining it for dust. I clenched my teeth, forcing a smile. "I'll try to meet your standards next time." Alex, who had been engrossed in some sports game on TV, looked up. "Mom's just particular. You'll get used to it." Particular was an understatement. Gloria had an eye for finding faults. Whether it was the arrangement of cushions on the sofa or the brand of tea I offered, nothing was ever good enough. And every week, it got progressively worse. Then, the day of dread arrived. Gloria came over, this time with suitcases. Large, oversized suitcases that took up the entire entryway. "I'll be living with you now," she declared, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. I was flabbergasted. "You're moving in. Was this discussed?" She shot me a look as if I had asked the dumbest question in the world. I don't need permission to stay with my own son. Stunned, I turned to Alex, my eyes begging him to say something, anything, to defend the sanctity of our home. He sighed, his eyes meeting the floor before finally settling on me. "If it makes my mom comfortable, what's the problem?" he said, leaving me feeling like an outsider in my own home. I was shattered. The one person who was supposed to stand by me had just willingly handed over the keys to our life to his overbearing mother. From that moment, the house didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a well-decorated prison. Every room echoed with Gloria's criticisms. Every piece of furniture was a monument to her intrusion, and every moment in that house served as a bitter reminder that I was now secondary in my own life. As I stood there, watching Alex help Gloria unpack her gigantic suitcases and claim another piece of my world, I realized that home had just lost its meaning. And as they both laughed about some old family joke, I felt my own laughter, the laughter that once filled this home, fade away into a silent scream that only I could hear. Gloria didn't waste any time transforming my house into her personal palace. Within hours of her self-invitation to live with us, she'd already started rearranging furniture, relegating my belongings to hidden corners, and marking her territory like some alpha wolf in a wildlife documentary. Her reign of terror wasn't just restricted to inanimate objects. No, she targeted me as well, daily. The emotional abuse that was previously limited to weekends had now become a permanent fixture in my life. Every morning began with a laundry list of chores she expected me to complete. She would literally hand me a notepad filled with tasks: mopping, vacuuming, laundry, dishes, you name it. And just for good measure, she'd verbally add, "And let's not forget that we need dinner by 7 p.m. Sharp young lady. I once tried to push back, saying, "You know, I do work too. And if we're all living here, shouldn't we share the responsibilities?" Her response was a cocktail of incredulity and disdain. "Share? You should be grateful you're in a home filled with elders to guide you." I looked at Alex for support, but all he offered was, "You know how moms are. Like things a certain way." She was turning my life into an endless loop of Cinderella-esque servitude, sans the fairy godmother. But unlike Cinderella, my prince was no rescuer. He was more like a secondary antagonist, idly watching as I withered away. While I worked from home, Gloria would lounge around like she was at a five-star resort, watching TV or talking for hours on the phone with her equally insufferable friends. I could hear her from my makeshift office, a small table pushed into the corner of our bedroom. Can you believe she had the audacity to suggest that I, Gloria, should help around the house? She laughed into the phone one day. Some people have no sense of decorum. Fuming, I finally decided to confront her. If you have time to gossip, you certainly have time to lend a hand. It's only fair. Fair, she sneered. Life isn't fair, sweetheart. You'd do well to learn that now. That night at dinner, I could barely contain my resentment as I set the table and served the food. I caught Alex watching me, a vague sense of concern, or was it guilt, crossing his features. "You okay, babe?" he finally asked. Gloria interrupted before I could reply. "Oh, don't fuss. Maya is just adjusting to having a full house. She's learning what it means to be part of a family." Family? This wasn't a family. It was a dictatorship ruled by a one-woman tormentor with her submissive son as her willing accomplice. In those days, my home, which had once been my sanctuary, had turned into a battlefield where I was always the losing side. And every night, as I lay beside Alex, a wall of unsaid words and unresolved tensions between us, I wondered how I had ended up in this nightmare. But worst of all, I wondered how long I could last before I shattered into a million pieces, each shard reflecting a moment where I'd allowed myself to be stripped of my dignity, my autonomy, and my happiness. In the following weeks, my life had descended into a dark abyss. It seemed like every waking moment was an exercise in humiliation or resentment. Between Gloria's relentless emotional abuse and my husband Alex's callous indifference, I felt like I was drowning with no lifeline in sight. Then came the breaking point, the proverbial straw that shattered the camel's back. One fateful afternoon, I returned from a grocery run to find Gloria grinning from ear to ear. She was practically gleaming, her eyes shining with a kind of malevolent glee I hadn't seen before. "What's going on?" I asked cautiously. She gestured grandly towards the driveway. I decided it was high time I upgraded my ride, so I bought a new car. I peered through the window. Sitting in the driveway was a sleek, brand new luxury car, the kind that comes with a six-figure price tag. "You did what?" I sputtered, disbelief overtaking me. With a flourish, she handed me a stack of papers. "It's leased, actually. I didn't have the cash to buy it outright, so I put it on credit. Monthly payments are due, starting next month. You'll be taking care of that." I felt as if I had been slapped. "You expect me to pay for a car you chose without even asking me?" "Oh, don't be dramatic," Gloria sneered. "It's not like you can't afford it. Besides, I deserve some luxuries in my old age." I turned to Alex, my eyes pleading for him to intervene, to finally stand up for me. "Alex, tell her she can't do this. This is outrageous." Alex shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "Mom's been through a lot. I think she deserves to treat herself." "Treat herself? With my money?" I was incredulous. Gloria chuckled. "Consider it rent for living in this house." The audacity of it was staggering. "This is my house. I've been living here for years before you or Alex moved in." Gloria's face twisted into a scornful smile. "You mean our house? After all, I raised the man you married. A mother's contribution is immeasurable and invaluable. It's the least you can do." My eyes filled with tears, but I refused to let them fall. Every fiber of my being was screaming, shouting that enough was enough. I was not going to be pushed around any longer. I was not going to be pushed around any longer. I was not going to be a doormat in my own home, a home I had built with years of blood, sweat, and tears. Taking a deep breath, I made my decision. I'm not paying for the car. Not now, not ever. If you want to keep it, you find a way to pay for it yourself. Gloria's face flushed crimson, her eyes narrowing into slits. I sidestepped just in time, her knuckles barely grazing my cheek as her fist whizzed past me. For a moment, we both froze, staring at each other in shock and recognition. In that instant, I realized I had crossed a line that had needed to be crossed. In the tense silence that followed, a new emotion filled the room, defiance. It emanated from me, filling the air with its potent energy. For the first time since Gloria had entered my life, I felt powerful, unbreakable, invincible. No more would I be the victim in my own life story. And as I looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror, the bruise forming on my cheek, a dark mark on my pale skin, I knew it was time to write a new chapter, one where I reclaimed my dignity, my agency, and my life. This was my breaking point, and from this moment on, things were going to change. With the line crossed and the battle lines clearly drawn, my mind shifted gears. All the hurt and humiliation that had festered within me gave birth to a newfound clarity. I knew I had to liberate myself, not just emotionally, but also legally and financially. And for that, I needed irrefutable evidence to bring Gloria and her spineless son down. So, I began to meticulously plan my counterattack. You see, what Gloria didn't know was that Alex and I had installed hidden cameras throughout the house for security reasons long before this marital catastrophe. It was a common-sense measure, or so we thought back when we believed the world outside was the threat. Little did we know the true peril would come from within. "Alex, can you take a look at the security system? I think it's glitching," I mentioned one evening as he mindlessly flipped through TV channels. "Sure, I'll get to it over the weekend," he said, barely glancing up from his screen. "No, it needs to be done tonight. I heard some strange noises last night," I lied, feigning concern. He sighed, rolling his eyes as he rose from the couch. "All right, let's take a look." Seizing the opportunity, I insisted on accompanying him to the control panel in the basement. I watched intently as he logged into the system, pretending to be fascinated by the technical aspects. My real purpose, however, was to note down his password as his fingers danced over the keypad. Admin 2022, I memorized. The key to my liberation. For the next few days, I acted as if nothing was amiss. I endured Gloria's constant nitpicking and derogatory remarks. I withstood her insufferable entitlement and her attempts to erode myself, worth all while knowing that the endgame was near. Whenever I had a moment to myself, I would log into the security system, isolating instances where Gloria's true colors were on unabashed display. Her screaming fits, her lazy lounging while I slaved away, and most importantly, her physical attempt to strike me. Everything was meticulously cataloged and backed up onto a separate drive. Meanwhile, I also consulted a divorce lawyer, detailing the emotional and physical abuse I had suffered. At first, she was skeptical, as many are when you tell them that you've been abused by a woman, especially an older one. But then I showed her the videos. I have to say, Mia, "This is an ironclad case," she said, her eyes widening as she watched clip after clip of Gloria's tyrannical behavior. "It's not just grounds for divorce, but potentially for a restraining order and even a criminal case." I nodded, my face a stoic mask. "I want to proceed with the divorce, and I want full ownership of my house and assets, and I want them to pay for the emotional damages they've caused." The lawyer looked at me, her eyes meeting mine. I thought about all the times I had been belittled, demeaned, and physically threatened in what should have been the sanctuary of my own home. "I've never been more sure about anything in my life," I said, my voice steady and resolute. Little did Gloria and Alex know, their reign was nearing its end, and the kingdom they had usurped was about to be reclaimed by its rightful owner. In the game of life, they had played their cards all wrong, and now it was my turn to deal the deck. With every piece in place, all that remained was to execute the plan. And this time, the final act would belong to me. The days leading up to the final confrontation were a blur of activity. Between my job, secretly meeting with my lawyer, and gathering more evidence, I was swamped. Yet, the enormity of what was about to happen didn't weigh me down. It electrified me. Each secret meeting, each collected piece of evidence was a small victory, a step towards reclaiming my life. The day finally came, and I felt a mixture of apprehension and anticipation. Today, everything would change, one way or another. My lawyer had prepared the divorce papers and a civil suit against Gloria and Alex for emotional and physical abuse. The legal documents were thorough and damning, and the evidence I had collected was overwhelming. There would be no way out for them. I invited them to sit in the living room, the very space where so many of my humiliations had unfolded. The confused looks and casual posture belied any suspicion. They had no idea that the tables were about to turn. "I've called this family meeting because there are things that need to be discussed," I began, looking each of them in the eye. Alex scoffed. "What's the big deal? Did someone forget to do the dishes again?" Gloria smirked. Or perhaps someone's being overly sensitive, as usual. I felt my hand tremble, but I steadied it. It was now or never. "No," I said firmly. "I'm ending our marriage, Alex, and your mother is no longer welcome in this house. I've filed for divorce, and both of you are being sued for emotional and physical abuse." For a moment, silence engulfed the room. Alex's face went from confusion to disbelief, then to a grim realization. Gloria's eyes widened, her lips parting, but no words coming out. "You can't be serious," Alex finally stammered. "I've never been more serious in my life," I responded. "I have documented evidence of the abuse both of you have subjected me to, and it's irrefutable. Video footage, audio recordings, you name it." Gloria sprang to her feet, trembling with rage. "You deceitful witch! Spying on your own family?" "No, gathering evidence against my tormentors," I corrected her. "Tormentors who happen to share a bloodline." I reached for a folder on the coffee table and threw it in their direction. "These are the legal documents. My lawyer assures me that you both don't stand a chance. I suggest you read them carefully." Alex picked up the folder, his hand shaking as he flipped through pages. "No, you ruined us. I'm just cleaning up the mess," I retorted. Gloria was livid, her face red as a tomato. "I will not let you do this to us. I will fight you and I will win." I leaned in, looking her straight in the eyes. "Bring it on. But remember, the law is on my side, justice is on my side, and most importantly, the truth is on my side." My lawyer walked into the room, her timing impeccable. "I believe we've said all there is to say. My client will see you in court." And just like that, the weight of years of abuse and torment lifted off my shoulders. As I watched them scramble to make sense of the world that had just crashed down on them, I felt the first taste of victory, sweet and invigorating. As they left my house, Gloria clutching the legal documents as if they were venomous snakes, and Alex looking like a lost child, I stood my ground. For the first time in years, my home felt like mine. My life felt like mine, and my destiny felt like mine. The court case was a whirlwind, but ultimately ended in my favor. With the evidence I had presented, the judgment was decisive and harsh. Alex and Gloria were ordered to pay $240,000 in damages and the luxury car. Well, after settling the remaining dues, that car was mine to keep. Yes, revenge is a dish best served cold, but justice is a fire that purifies everything it touches. And as I watched that fire consume the webs of deceit, control, and abuse that had ensnared me for so long, I felt reborn. This was my story, and finally, it had an ending I could be proud of.